They were icons of the screen, legends whose voices, faces, and stories shaped entire generations. Yet behind the applause and the golden glow of Hollywood, a silent enemy moved in the shadows. It crept through the bloodstream, turned ordinary infections into fatal storms, and stole lives in a matter of hours. Tonight, we walk into the darkness behind the spotlight to uncover the hidden battles these actors never had the chance to escape. The unseen killer that claimed them was sepsis. Number 1. Patty Duke. She had spent her life fighting battles that most people never saw. Fame, criticism, and the weight of her own mind had shaped her into someone both strong and deeply human. But in her final hours, the force that claimed her life was something far more silent. On March 29, 2016, Patty Duke was taken to a hospital in Coeur d'Alene after suffering a sudden and unbearable abdominal pain. Those around her believed she would recover. She had survived far worse before. Doctors soon discovered the truth. A section of her intestine had ruptured, releasing bacteria into her abdomen. Within hours, the infection slipped into her bloodstream. What began as a hidden internal tear became a rapidly escalating battle her body could not keep up with. Sepsis had taken hold, lowering her blood pressure, weakening her organs, and pushing her into a spiral from which there was no return. Even with antibiotics and emergency care, the damage moved faster than medicine could stop. At 69, Patty Duke passed away surrounded by the people who loved her most. Fans struggled to understand how someone so full of life could be gone so suddenly. But doctors explained that sepsis often disguises itself as common illness, a fever, a pain, a moment of dizziness, and then the silent collapse that follows. Her story became a warning, a reminder that even the strongest hearts are vulnerable to the infections we never see coming. Number 2. Jim Henson. In the days before his death, Jim Henson seemed unstoppable. He was working, giving interviews, planning new projects with the same gentle brilliance that had shaped The Muppets and Sesame Street. To everyone around him, he looked healthy, full of life, and moving forward at his usual creative pace. He believed he only had the flu. A little rest, he thought, and he would be fine. But inside his body, something far more dangerous was unfolding. A rare and aggressive bacterial infection had begun spreading through his lungs. By the time he finally agreed to go to the emergency room on May 16, 1990, the infection had already entered his bloodstream. Doctors discovered he was suffering from a fast-moving strain of Group A streptococcus, a bacteria capable of triggering toxic shock syndrome, one of the deadliest forms of sepsis. His organs began shutting down one by one. The medical team fought desperately to stabilize him, but the infection had moved with terrifying speed. In the early morning hours, Jim Henson lost consciousness, and shortly after, he was gone at just 54 years old. Millions were devastated. Only days before, he had appeared vibrant and energetic, sharing ideas for new stories he never had the chance to tell. Experts later explained how sepsis can hide behind symptoms that seem harmless: a cough, fatigue, trouble breathing. Signs so ordinary that even someone as attentive as Henson overlooked them. His passing became one of the most heartbreaking reminders of how quickly an unseen infection can silence a brilliant life. Behind the joy he brought to the world, his final hours revealed a truth few ever consider. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemy is the one that feels familiar. Number 3. Tanya Roberts. On Christmas Eve of 2020, Tanya Roberts collapsed inside her Los Angeles home, gasping for breath as panic surrounded her. Just days earlier, she had been posting updates and videos online, looking healthy, active, and full of her usual bright energy. Nothing hinted at the silent danger growing inside her. Her partner rushed her to the hospital, believing it was a sudden respiratory issue. But the truth was far more severe than anyone expected. Doctors discovered that what began as a simple urinary tract infection had already spread into her bloodstream. Within hours, her body was battling full-scale sepsis. They placed her on oxygen, pumped powerful antibiotics through her veins, and fought to stabilize a system collapsing from the inside. For a moment, she seemed to improve. There was hope. Messages flowed in from fans across the world. But sepsis is unpredictable, and that hope quickly slipped away. Her blood pressure crashed, her organs weakened. One by one, they began to fail. On January 4, 2021, Tanya Roberts, Bond girl, TV star, and beloved performer, took her final breath at the age of 65. Early confusion in the media led to heartbreaking misinformation, as news outlets announced her death before it was confirmed, only for her condition to worsen hours later. When the truth finally settled, her representative explained the cause plainly: sepsis, triggered by a urinary tract infection many would have dismissed as harmless. Fans were stunned. She had seemed so alive only days before. Health experts used her story to warn millions about the danger of ignoring fatigue, fever, or sudden weakness, especially when an infection is involved. Tanya Roberts left behind a legacy of beauty, determination, and resilience. But her final chapter became something more, a stark reminder of how quickly a hidden infection can turn fatal, even for someone who appeared strong and full of life. Number 4. Brian Dennehy. In the final days of his life, Brian Dennehy felt only a growing fatigue, the kind of weakness people often blame on age or a passing illness. To those around him, nothing seemed alarming. He was still reading scripts, still engaged, still carrying himself with the same quiet authority that had defined his 5 decades in film and theater. But beneath that calm surface, an infection was already spreading through his body, unrecognized, relentless, and faster than anyone imagined. On April 15, 2020, the news broke that he had died at his home in New Haven, Connecticut. The cause was cardiac arrest brought on by sepsis. Not the global health crisis dominating headlines at the time, but a sudden, silent infection that overwhelmed even a man known for his strength. In the days leading up to his death, he had experienced fever and trouble breathing, symptoms easy to mistake for a minor respiratory issue. No one realized that bacteria had already entered his bloodstream and triggered the devastating chain reaction known as sepsis. His heart struggled, his lungs faltered, and before help could reach him, Brian Dennehy was gone at 81. Fans, colleagues, and friends were stunned. He had seemed active, present, and full of the same depth that made his performances unforgettable in films like First Blood and Cocoon. Tributes poured in from across the industry, each one echoing the same disbelief that someone so commanding could be claimed by something so invisible. Medical experts pointed to his case as yet another reminder that sepsis rarely announces itself. It hides behind familiar symptoms, growing stronger as the body turns against itself. Brian Dennehy had spent a lifetime portraying soldiers, fathers, and men of immense conviction. Yet, in the end, it was a quiet infection, one that moved too quickly to fight, that took him from the world he helped shape. Number 5. Bernie Mac. In the summer of 2008, Bernie Mac was still the powerful voice of comedy, sharp, fearless, larger than life. His energy filled every room he entered, and even in moments of exhaustion, he carried himself with a strength that felt unbreakable. So when he began feeling weak, tired, and short of breath, his friends assumed it was simply overwork. Bernie had battled health issues before, including chronic sarcoidosis, but he always pushed through with the same determination that built his career. When the fever came, doctors admitted him to Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. Pneumonia was the diagnosis, serious but treatable. His medical team started antibiotics, believing they had caught it in time. But what no one realized was that the infection had already moved deeper. It had slipped into his bloodstream, transforming into sepsis, the silent chain reaction that can bring the strongest bodies to their knees. His blood pressure dropped, his organs weakened. Machines worked to help him breathe, and doctors fought to stabilize him with medication and ventilator support. For a brief moment, it looked like he might pull through. His numbers improved, then slipped, then rose again. But sepsis is unpredictable, and each small improvement was followed by another devastating setback. His heart could not endure the storm much longer. On August 9, 2008, Bernie Mac's battle came to an end at the age of 50. Fans worldwide were stunned. He had been a symbol of raw honesty and resilience, a man who rose from Chicago's South Side to Hollywood's brightest stages. Many believed his long struggle with illness had taken him, but doctors clarified the truth. Pneumonia triggered the sepsis that led to organ failure. It was the hidden infection, not the chronic condition, that delivered the final blow. In the months after his death, his case became a lesson taught in hospitals and awareness campaigns. A reminder that pneumonia, when ignored or underestimated, can shift into something far deadlier. Bernie Mac's laughter had once filled theaters and living rooms. His final days revealed a sobering truth. Even the boldest voices can fall silent when sepsis moves too fast. Number 6. R. Lee Ermey. To millions, he was the booming voice of discipline, the unshakable drill instructor whose presence filled every frame. Off-screen, R. Lee Ermey carried the same strength, unyielding, humorous, and built from years of real military service. So when he developed what he believed was a simple chest cold, he pushed through it the way he pushed through everything in life. He kept working, kept appearing at events, kept moving forward with the force of someone who never backed down. But pneumonia does not care about strength, and in older adults it can become the perfect doorway for something far more deadly. As the infection spread through his lungs, the inflammation slipped into his bloodstream. His immune system reacted violently, spiraling into sepsis. What felt like a cold became a battle unfolding too quickly to fight. Doctors tried everything: oxygen, antibiotics, fluid support, but sepsis doesn't wait. His blood pressure fell, his organs weakened, and the man who had shaped one of cinema's most iconic performances was suddenly fighting for his life. On April 15, 2018, R. Lee Ermey died at the age of 74. Fans were stunned. Only weeks earlier, he had been sharing interviews and updates still full of fire and humor, still embodying the same presence that made him unforgettable in Full Metal Jacket. The military community mourned deeply. Veterans spoke of his decades of advocacy, his tireless support for service members, his visits to military bases around the world. To many, losing him felt like losing a mentor. Health experts later used his story to warn the public. Pneumonia is one of the most common paths to sepsis. Symptoms like fever, coughing, or chest pain can seem harmless, yet the infection may already be moving silently into the blood. R. Lee Ermey faced countless battles in his life, but his final fight was against an enemy he couldn't see, an infection that overwhelmed even a warrior's heart. Number 7. Nick Cordero. His story unfolded in front of the world, day after day, update after update, a public battle that showed both the fragility and the strength of a young performer fighting for his life. In late March 2020, Nick Cordero entered Cedars-Sinai Medical Center with fever and breathing difficulties. At first, it seemed like a severe infection, something doctors believed they could control. But within days, his condition collapsed faster than anyone expected. Blood clots formed in his legs, forcing doctors to amputate one limb to keep him alive. His lungs weakened, struggling to bring in air even with machines supporting every breath. Behind all of this was the same silent force that would later take him: sepsis. As the infection spread through his bloodstream, inflammation ravaged his organs. Though doctors fought tirelessly, the damage came in waves: a small improvement, then a sharp decline, then another flicker of hope that vanished just as quickly. His wife, Amanda Klutz, shared each moment publicly, and the world watched with aching hearts. Messages flooded in from Broadway, from Hollywood, from fans who had seen his brilliance in Bullets Over Broadway or followed him through years of musical work. Nick had been vibrant, full of warmth and optimism, the type of performer whose smile could light up a stage. No one could believe that someone only 41 years old could be slipping away so quickly. For more than 90 days, he was kept alive through every possible intervention: ventilators, medications, endless attempts to stabilize failing organs. But sepsis is a force that does not stop once it takes hold. On July 5, 2020, after months of fighting, Nick Cordero passed away. The shock rippled far beyond the theater world. His struggle became one of the most public examples of how relentless sepsis can be, even for the young, the strong, and the hopeful. After his death, Amanda became an outspoken advocate for awareness, reminding millions that sepsis does not discriminate. It can strike anyone, and it can move faster than even the most advanced medicine. Nick's life was filled with talent, kindness, and light. His final chapter showed how quickly that light can fade when an infection becomes a storm inside the body. Number 8. Charlby Dean. Only weeks before her death, Charlby Dean was standing under bright festival lights, smiling on red carpets, celebrating the global success of Triangle of Sadness. At just 32, her career was rising fast. She was attending premieres, giving interviews, and becoming one of the most promising new faces in Hollywood. To everyone watching, she seemed unstoppable, healthy, radiant, and on the edge of a breakthrough. Then, on August 29, 2022, everything changed in a single morning. She began feeling suddenly unwell and was rushed to a hospital in New York City. Within hours, her condition collapsed with terrifying speed. Doctors discovered she was battling an aggressive bacterial infection caused by capnocytophaga, a rare organism that is often harmless to healthy individuals. But for Charlby, it was different. Years earlier, she had lost her spleen after a car accident. Without it, her body was far more vulnerable to certain infections. The bacteria slipped into her bloodstream, triggering sepsis, a violent immune reaction that began shutting her organs down one by one. Despite immediate treatment, despite all efforts to stabilize her, the damage moved too fast. By the end of the same day, Charlby Dean was gone. The industry froze in shock. Hours earlier, she had seemed like the future of international cinema. Doctors later explained what made her case so tragic. People without a spleen face higher risks from infections that most others can fight off. Even minor symptoms require urgent attention. But sepsis rarely gives warnings. It hides behind fatigue, fever, or discomfort until the body is already losing the race. Colleagues described Charlby as warm, disciplined, and deeply passionate about her craft. Her performance in Triangle of Sadness had positioned her as one of the most important rising stars of her generation. Her sudden death shattered that trajectory, leaving behind a haunting reminder: even the healthiest, youngest, and brightest lives can be claimed in a single day when a hidden infection becomes a silent storm. Number 9. Charlie Robinson. For more than 5 decades, Charlie Robinson brought quiet warmth and effortless humor to every role he touched. From stage performances to his iconic presence on Night Court, he was the kind of actor who made scenes feel alive simply by entering the frame. Even during treatment for cancer in 2021, he remained optimistic, talking with friends about future projects and the reboot of the show that had made him a household name. No one imagined that his final days were already approaching. But during his hospital stay in early July, everything changed. A sudden infection appeared, small at first, then rapidly spreading. Within hours, bacteria had entered his bloodstream, unleashing the chain reaction doctors feared most. Sepsis had taken hold. His blood pressure dropped, his organs struggled. Despite immediate care, antibiotics, and oxygen support, the infection moved at a pace no one could stop. On July 11, 2021, Charlie Robinson died at 75. The official report listed metastatic cancer, sepsis, and multiple organ failure. But to those who knew him, it felt impossible. Just days earlier, he had still been smiling, still talking about scripts, still carrying the gentle spirit that made him beloved both on and off screen. The suddenness of his decline left co-stars and fans in disbelief. Tributes poured in. Stories of his kindness, his professionalism, his ability to make anyone feel seen. Health experts later explained that cancer patients are at higher risk of sepsis because their immune systems are weakened. Even minor infections can become deadly within hours, and symptoms are often mistaken for ordinary fatigue or discomfort. Charlie Robinson's legacy stretches across generations of television viewers. Yet the way he left this world became another reminder of a truth many overlook. Sepsis often strikes fastest in those already fighting another battle. For Charlie, it was not the long fight with cancer that took him, but the silent infection that reached his bloodstream before anyone could stop it. Number 10. Jeff Conaway. For many fans, Jeff Conaway will always be the charming rebel from Grease or the soft-spoken cab driver from Taxi. But behind the scenes, his life was marked by years of health struggles and a quiet fight to rebuild himself. In May 2011, that fight took a tragic turn. He was found unconscious at his home and rushed to a Los Angeles hospital, where doctors discovered he was suffering from severe pneumonia, a condition that, unknown to many, can quickly open the door to something far deadlier. As his lungs filled with infection, bacteria slipped into his bloodstream. Sepsis had begun. Doctors placed him under intensive care, working to control the damage with antibiotics, fluids, and ventilator support. But the infection had already advanced too far. His organs weakened, his blood pressure sank, and when he showed no signs of brain activity, his family faced the unbearable decision to remove life support. On May 27, 2011, Jeff Conaway died at the age of 60. News of his death spread quickly, and many assumed his long public struggles had finally taken him. But the official cause was clear: pneumonia that developed into sepsis. His passing became a striking example used by medical professionals to teach how respiratory infections can escalate when they go untreated or are recognized too late. Jeff Conaway's career had soared during the 1970s and 80s. His natural charm, warm smile, and expressive voice made him unforgettable on screen. Those who worked with him remembered a sensitive, generous soul who brought sincerity into every performance. That sincerity is what made his final chapter so devastating. A simple infection, one that might have been manageable with early intervention, became the silent force that ended his life. His story remains a reminder that sepsis often hides behind familiar symptoms: coughing, fatigue, chest pain, trouble breathing. Symptoms easy to dismiss, symptoms that should never be ignored. Jeff Conaway's legacy lives in the roles that defined him and in the lesson his passing continues to teach. Number 11. Dushan Monique Brown. She was a quiet force on Chicago Fire, the kind of actress whose presence made scenes feel grounded, authentic, and real. Off-screen, Dushan Monique Brown carried the same warmth, soft-spoken, kind, and beloved by everyone who worked with her. That made what happened in March 2018 even more shocking. In the days before her death, she had visited a clinic after experiencing chest pain and lightheadedness. Doctors found nothing alarming and sent her home to rest. No one knew that an invisible danger was already spreading inside her. By the next day, everything changed. Her condition worsened suddenly, and she was rushed to the hospital. Within hours, she went into cardiac arrest. Doctors fought to revive her, but the damage had already begun. The medical examiner later revealed the cause: sepsis of unknown origin. An infection no one had detected had slipped into her bloodstream and triggered a deadly chain reaction. Even with treatment, sepsis at this stage leaves little room for survival. She was only 49. The cast and crew of Chicago Fire were devastated. Dushan had filmed scenes just a week earlier. She had laughed with colleagues, made plans, talked about future episodes. There had been no sign that her life was approaching its final days. The suddenness of her loss left the entertainment community reeling. Medical experts explained that her story was tragically common. Sepsis often begins with symptoms people mistake for ordinary fatigue, stress, or a mild illness: fever, dizziness, weakness, confusion. Without immediate intervention, the infection rapidly overwhelms the body, shutting down vital organs before doctors can identify the source. Dushan Monique Brown's passing became a painful reminder of how silent and swift sepsis can be. She was a mother, a colleague, a bright presence behind the scenes of one of television's most popular series. And yet, in a matter of hours, an unseen infection claimed her life, leaving behind a void that those who knew her still feel today. Number 12. Christopher Cazenove. For audiences who loved the elegance and drama of classic television, Christopher Cazenove was the very image of sophistication. His role as Ben Carrington in Dynasty made him unforgettable, refined, charismatic, and effortlessly commanding. Off-screen, he carried the same grace. But in early 2010, that calm exterior hit a battle no one could see. What began as a minor illness quickly grew into something far deadlier. After feeling unwell for several days, he was admitted to a London hospital in March. Doctors soon discovered the truth. Bacteria had entered his bloodstream, triggering septicemia, a severe form of sepsis. At first, there were moments of improvement, days when he seemed stronger, when his family hoped he would recover. But sepsis is unpredictable. Each step forward was followed by another collapse, another sign that the infection was gaining ground faster than medicine could stop it. For weeks, his condition rose and fell like a tide. Antibiotics, oxygen support, and intensive care could not reverse the growing damage. His organs were weakening. His body was fighting, but the inflammation caused by the infection was destroying the very systems meant to protect him. On April 7, 2010, Christopher Cazenove passed away at the age of 64. Fans across the United Kingdom and the United States were heartbroken. To them, he had always seemed composed, steady, almost unshakable. His colleagues remembered him as a gentleman, gracious, dedicated, and generous with everyone he worked with. The news that sepsis had taken him shocked many who barely understood how quickly a bloodstream infection can turn fatal. Medical experts used his case to explain that septicemia can grow from infections that begin anywhere in the body. Fever, chills, rapid breathing, or confusion, symptoms so easy to overlook, may be the earliest warnings. When ignored, they can become the quiet prelude to a crisis. Christopher Cazenove's death became another reminder of how dangerous that silence can be. His legacy, however, remains. A career defined by elegance, a presence that shaped an era of television, and a life that ended far too soon at the hands of a hidden enemy few ever think about until it is too late.
Number 13. Robert Trebor. For fans of Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, and Xena Warrior Princess, Robert Trebor was unforgettable. His sharp humor, expressive face, and quick wit made his character, Salmoneus, one of the most beloved figures of the entire franchise. Off-camera, he was just as warm, writing, interacting with fans, and sharing hopeful updates even as he quietly battled leukemia. But the final chapter of his life was shaped by a danger few ever see coming. In early 2025, he was undergoing treatment following a stem cell transplant, a procedure that leaves the immune system fragile and exposed. Even the smallest infections can become life-threatening. And soon, doctors discovered exactly that had happened. A bacterial infection had entered his bloodstream. For someone in his condition, it was a race against time from the very first moment. Sepsis took hold quickly, overwhelming his weakened defenses. Antibiotics, oxygen therapy, and intensive care could not stop the progression. His organs began to fail, each hour bringing more damage than the last. Those close to him said he had remained hopeful just weeks before, writing, reading, imagining himself returning to the stage or the screen. But sepsis does not offer second chances. On March 12, 2025, Robert Trebor died at the age of 71. The news devastated a generation of fans who had grown up watching him bring humor and heart to fantastical worlds. Colleagues described him as generous, intelligent, endlessly kind. Many were shocked to learn that the final cause of death was sepsis, a complication that strikes hardest at those whose immune systems are already worn down. Doctors later explained that transplant patients face extreme vulnerability. Infections that would barely harm a healthy person can become catastrophic. Robert's case became a reminder of just how narrow the line can be between stability and collapse when the body is fighting both disease and recovery. His legacy endures in the laughter he created and the characters he brought to life. But his final days reveal a truth too often overlooked. For those with weakened immunity, even the smallest infection may be the beginning of a battle the body cannot win.
Number 14. George Zunza was one of those faces audiences instantly recognized. From Back to the Future to countless television roles throughout the 1970s and 80s, he brought a natural warmth and honesty to every character he played. Off-screen, he was known as generous, funny, and endlessly approachable. A man who loved talking with fans and never carried the ego of someone who had spent a lifetime in Hollywood. But in the summer of 2010, his gentle presence hid a danger that neither he nor those close to him could see coming. In the weeks before his death, he felt unwell but continued working on small projects, meeting admirers, and attending conventions. To him, it was nothing more than a seasonal illness. A bit of rest, he thought, and he would be back to normal. But the infection inside his body was spreading faster than he realized. By early August, he was rushed to a hospital in Washington, Pennsylvania, where doctors discovered the truth. Bacteria had already reached his bloodstream. Sepsis had begun. Despite immediate treatment, antibiotics, and emergency care, the infection had moved too far. His blood pressure collapsed, his organs weakened, and in a matter of hours, the damage could not be reversed. On August 9, 2010, George Zunza died at the age of 70, leaving friends, colleagues, and fans stunned by the suddenness of his loss. The entertainment world mourned deeply. Tributes described him as a steady professional, humble, dedicated, and filled with quiet humor. Many who knew him personally spoke of his warmth, the way he treated every crew member with respect, the way he brought heart into even the smallest roles. Health experts explained that his story reflects a common danger. Older adults often mistake early signs of sepsis for ordinary illness, fever, confusion, weakness, allowing infections to grow silently until the body is overwhelmed. George Zunza's passing became another reminder of how quickly an unseen infection can turn fatal, even for someone who had always seemed strong, calm, and full of life. His legacy remains in the countless characters he portrayed, a career built on sincerity, a life ended far too suddenly by a silent force the world rarely notices until it's too late.
Number 15. Conrad Brooks. He was one of the last living links to a vanished era of Hollywood, an era of B-movies, midnight screenings, and filmmakers who created worlds with more passion than budget. Conrad Brooks, known for his work with cult director Ed Wood in films like Plan 9 from Outer Space and Glenn or Glenda, carried that history with him everywhere he went. Even in his later years, he embraced his past with humor and gratitude, meeting fans, attending festivals, and responding to letters from people who still loved those strange, wonderful films. But by late 2017, age and illness had begun to weigh on him. He had been quietly battling prostate cancer, his body growing weaker as the months passed. Still, he never lost the gentle warmth that made him a favorite among cult cinema enthusiasts. Then, in late November, he developed an infection, one that seemed small at first but quickly intensified. The bacteria entered his bloodstream, triggering an aggressive form of sepsis. Doctors fought to stabilize him, but his immune system was already too fragile. His blood pressure dropped, his organs began to fail. And despite every effort to reverse the damage, the infection moved faster than medicine could stop. On December 6, 2017, Conrad Brooks died in Martinsburg, West Virginia, at the age of 86. His passing marked the end of an era. Fans mourned not just the man, but the piece of film history he represented. He had been one of the last direct connections to a generation of artists who worked with heart, improvisation, and pure belief. People who created cinema simply because they loved it. Conrad never distanced himself from that legacy. He celebrated it. He lived it until the end. Doctors later explained that elderly patients, especially those weakened by chronic illness, are among the most vulnerable to sepsis. Simple infections can evolve into fatal emergencies if unnoticed or untreated. Conrad Brooks's sudden decline became yet another reminder of how quickly the silent force of sepsis can take hold. But his memory lives on through the films that refuse to be forgotten and through the fans who continue to rediscover him decades later. A quiet life, a humble legacy, and a final chapter claimed by an enemy no one ever sees coming. In the end, each of these lives was taken not by fame, not by scandal, not by the storms that so often haunt Hollywood, but by a silent enemy moving through the bloodstream. Sepsis does not choose its victims. It arrives quietly, it strikes without warning, and it reminds us that even the brightest stars can be dimmed in a single moment. If this story moved you, share your thoughts, support the channel, and stay with us as we continue to explore the dark lights that linger behind the Hollywood spotlight.